Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jody Brockington, and I am here to kick off today's new National Urban League's Digital Career Success Series featuring Jacquette M. Timmons. The topic today is Your Money, Your Career. Leverage your personal power for a healthy relationship with money. Jacquette comes with many years of experience in the financial sector and has transformed her own career, just like she's hoping to help you all today, to find happiness and personal power from your career, which is usually based on money. For those of you that were with us last week, we discussed how can you find a paycheck out of your passion. Often we do not always find a job that can pay us what we believe we're worth, in addition to the other parts of our lives. Jacquette is here today to show you how your money and your career can really be healthy and happy and bring you the rewards you look for. We welcome her today with open arms to help you try to balance out your career and really figure out what your relationship with money is and where they both can connect and your career can bring you the success you want. Jacquette, thank you so much for joining us today, and I want to remind you and the rest of our listeners, please do not put it on mute or on hold, because we will hear music today and we are taping. And also, if you have any questions, please send them in and we will answer them at the Q&A session in the last 15 minutes of this recording. Look forward to hearing what you have to say, Jacquette, and welcome to the National Urban League Digital Career Success Series.
Jody, thank you so very, very much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jacquette Timmons, and I am so delighted to welcome you to Your Money, Your Career. You are in the right place if you are curious about how best to manage how your career choices and your financial choices intersect with one another. You are also in the right place if you get that your primary goal is at all times to be the CEO of your career and the CFO of your personal finances. And I just want to pause here for a moment and just make a comment on one of the descriptions, the sentence that I saw in one of the descriptions for today, where it actually introduced the idea that perhaps working as an entrepreneur is riskier than working as an employee. And I'm going to challenge that and say that that's not necessarily the case. So you're in the right place if you get that at all times, even if you work as an employee, you are the CEO of your career and you are the CFO of your personal finances. You are also in the right place if you want a simple and yet a profound way to own your leadership role and to take that to the next level, again, as it pertains to both of your finances and your career. Some of you, I don't know, I am meeting you for the very first time virtually. So again, I'm Jacquette Timmons. I'm a financial behaviorist. And coaching, teaching, speaking, writing are some of the ways in which I do my work, which has been featured in a variety of media outlets, including CNN, Fox, HLN, Black Enterprise Business Report, NPR, and the Wall Street Journal. I am also the author of Financial Intimacy. And I work with individuals and couples on a one-on-one basis. I also offer group coaching. And what I do when I'm working with clients is provide strategies that appeal to both the left and the right brain thinker as my clients are looking to achieve both their financial and their life goals. My particular approach to doing that is in integrating the psychology and the emotions of money with the numbers. And you'll hear me say today a few times, and if we continue our relationship beyond today, you will hear me say two things quite often. One is that money is never just about money. And two, being money smart isn't a gift, it's a skill. And so as with any skill that needs to be developed, you have to make sure that you have a system in place to refine it. But I'm here today to talk about your money, your career with two hats. There's the personal hat, because I'm in the same position as you in terms of navigating my choices and making sure that the choices that I make in my business complement my personal financial goals, my personal life goals, and to also make sure that the reverse is true as well. But from a professional standpoint, I'm able to sit on the same side of the table as you because I spend almost every single day helping my clients manage their money, which by default means also helping them to manage their career, which is really managing your life, right? Because at the end of the day, even though we kind of bifurcate them and we look at them as two separate streams, it really all comes together, and it's really all about how do you create a life that you desire and that brings you great joy. And I've been at this for a little bit of time. I've been in the industry for 28 years, and I've had my own firm for 19 of those years. And so the personal experience plus the professional experience certainly helps me to sit on the same side of the table as you. But so does the awareness that emotions drive behaviors, drive attitudes. And being the quant that I am, I can't just stay at the 30,000-foot level. I also need to have some practical tools and some practical steps that are at the 500-foot level. And so I'm all about bridging the 30,000-foot with the 500 by providing you with systems, principles, and a framework so that you can make the decisions that you need to make holistically. And that is what I'm going to do during our time together today. So here's what you're going to learn. First is we're going to do an exercise that I utilize with every coaching client. I do it in every workshop. It's also highlighted in my book. It's called The Financial Wheel, and it is designed to help you refine your CFO and your CEO skills. We're also going to review 8 no matter what habits that will increase your confidence and magnify your power. And the whole idea is you are always in the front, but there's a difference between being in the front leading and being in the front being pushed by. And I want you to lead your life and not be pushed by your circumstances. If I think of the first 2 takeaways as tangible things, things that you can actually feel and see and touch and measure, the third one might not fall into that. It's a little more intangible, but I think it is just as important. And the other thing that you're going to learn today is why it is that you need to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur as you navigate this new you economy. So even if you work as an employee, even if that is your intention for your entire career, regardless of whether you work in academia, you work in for-profit, or you work in nonprofit, you have to adopt the mindset of an entrepreneur. And let me just share some statistics with you to kind of just drive home that point. The first is 4.4 years. The average worker today stays in his or her job for 4.4 years, according to the most recent data available from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Another number, a third. 1 in 3 Americans, that's roughly 42 million people, are estimated to be freelancers. By 2020, freelancers are expected to make up 50% of the full-time workforce. And that stat comes from Work Market. What this is all, I think, telegraphing to all of us is that it is more critical today than perhaps it ever has been that you be proactive, that you be strategic, and that you be intentional about your career choices and as well about your financial choices. At the end, we will certainly set some time aside for some Q&A, but I also want to let you know if you're interested in continuing to work with me or just get to know more about my work, I will show you how to do that at the end as well. But I want to kind of use this next slide to set the tone for our conversation. When you think of a mirror and you look in a mirror, you are seeing a reflection of yourself. if you walk down the street and you take a quick glance at the window of a store or an establishment, that too is giving you a reflection. That reflection is doing nothing more than showing you what it sees. What's going on, though, is a thought cloud. And in that thought cloud, you are saying things to yourself about how you look, whether you approve of how you look, whether you like your outfit, whether you wish you had worn something differently. Interestingly, the same thing happens with your wallet. Every single time you pull out your wallet and you get cash, you get your debit card, you get your credit card, you go online to do a banking transaction or a purchase transaction, there are two things going on. There's the actual act of what you are doing, and then there's the thought cloud. And in that thought cloud are things like your behavior about money, your beliefs about it, your thoughts about it, your fears, your concerns, your dreams, your goals, the things that you aspire to. All of that is happening, whether or not you are paying attention or not. That is what is going on every single time you go to make a decision with your money or you go to do something with your money. And that's a really good framework to just keep in mind as we continue our conversation and do the first exercise that I mentioned, which is the financial wheel. And I take this visual from Carl Richards, the behavior gap guy, because I think that it's just such a wonderful illustration of really honing in on how much, when you think of the big picture, how much the money part actually plays in relation to all of the other stuff that's going on. And since you see a circle there, I'm going to invite you to also draw a circle, but you're going to have it be a little bit different than what you see on your screen. So hopefully you have pen and paper nearby. Draw a circle as large as you can on that paper that you have. And on the inside of that paper, on the inside of that circle, I want you to draw a vertical line and a horizontal line so that you have 4 sections. And then this is how I want you to plot out the inside of that circle. On your upper left-hand side, the upper left-hand quadrant, write earn. On the upper right-hand quadrant, right next to earn, write save. On the lower right-hand quadrant, right beneath save, write invest. And then in the box that remains, spend. So if you're looking at your circle and you're looking at it, going clockwise in terms of your watch, you've got earn around, between 9 and 12 a.m. 9 a.m. and 12 a.m. You've got save between 12 p.m. and 3. You've got invest between 3 and 6. And then you've got spend between 6 and 9. So I paused for a moment just to give you a second to make sure that you had that picture drawn. And we're going to go through and do some questions for each of those different sections, beginning with save. And I'm going to ask that you suspend what is and give yourself permission to think big as I ask you these different questions. Beginning with, how much do you want to save in the next 30 days? So don't base it on what you know is possible. Give yourself permission to think big and write down, if you could have your druthers, what would you want to save in the next 30 days? Moving beyond 30 days, what do you want to save by the end of 2014? So when December 31st comes, what do you want to say you have saved this year? Now let's expand that time frame even longer. And think of it over the course of your lifetime. How much do you want to save over the course of your lifetime? So you've got 3 time periods. 30 days, the end of this year, so that gives us, a little over, 7 months or so? And then you've got over the course of your lifetime. And then I want you to write why. Why do the numbers that you've written down matter to you? And I'm going to be silent for just 10 seconds to give you a moment to just begin to at least answer that. Now we're going to talk about invest. And when most people talk about investing, understandably so, they're thinking about investments in the form of assets like real estate or stocks and bonds or mutual funds, and that's fine, certainly includes that. But I want you to also expand the definition and think about what do you want to own from an investment standpoint in the form of the assets that I've just noted, but also who are the people in your life that you want to be able to support, and what are the causes that are important to you that you also want to be able to support. So when you're thinking about investing, we want to expand the definition and not just keep it so narrowly confined to, again, real estate or stocks or bonds or mutual funds. That is important as well. But also, who are the people in your life that you want to be able to support, and what are the causes that you want to be able to support. And again, I'll be silent for about 10 seconds to at least give you a moment to just begin to jot down your answers to those questions. Now we're moving on to spend, right? This is the part that everybody likes, right? We like to spend our money on the things that we enjoy and the experiences that we enjoy. Here, I want you to think about whenever you have said, if I had more money, I would. How did you complete that sentence? Or what were you thinking when you actually said that? What were you thinking about as a completion to that sentence? So if you had, no constraints, and you could say, if I had more money, I would, what would you do? What would you do differently with your time? What would you buy that you don't currently have? Where would you go that you currently haven't gone or that's on your wish list? So again, you're not confining yourself to what is real based upon what is in your bank account right now, but if money were not an issue, what would you do differently in terms of how you spend your time, in terms of what you would buy, as well as with regards to where would you go? If money were not an issue, what would be different? What are you not doing today because money is constraining you, or the absence of money is constraining you? And I'll give you 10 seconds for that. And now we come to earn. We're going to do the same time frame that we did for save with earn. And again, I'm going to invite you to suspend what is currently the case in terms of what you're earning. So if you could go into your boss's office tomorrow, or if you are listening in and you actually work as an entrepreneur and you could renegotiate your prices that you charge your clients, what would you want to earn then in the next 30 days? If you could go in tomorrow and you could renegotiate your salary, or you could renegotiate the prices you charge your clients, what would that number look like in the next 30 days? How would that number be different when you annualize that by the end of this year? And then, what do you want to earn over the course of your lifetime? And I'll give you 10 seconds to write that down. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but when I invited you to draw the circle and to plot it out, we started with earn. And yet, when I started asking you questions, we started with save. There was a reason for that. Most of us, if not all of us, have been conditioned where we decide how much we're going to save, how we're going to invest what we save, and how much we're going to spend based upon what we earn. I call that living by default. By having you begin, answer the questions, first with save, then moving to invest, then moving to spend, and then ending with earn, I'm asking you to entertain a different approach. And that approach is what I refer to as living by design. So if the first is living by default, which I think I may have messed up there, if the first is living by default, the second is living by design. And with by design, you are having a reflective moment. You're thinking about what you want to save. You're thinking about how you want to invest. You're thinking about what you want to spend your money on. And then you're asking the question, what do I need to earn to make this happen? That is an entirely different, subtle, but, significant shift in terms of how you relate to the decisions that you make around your career. It influences how you negotiate in terms of your salary, how you negotiate in terms of your bonus, if you're eligible for a bonus. It influences the prices that you set if you work as an entrepreneur, and how you raise those prices when the time comes for you to do that. So it's a subtle shift, but it is really, really significant. And what I have found in my experience from working with people is most people live their lives by default, meaning they make what they earn work for them, as opposed to figuring out, what do I need to earn to live the life that I want to live the way I want to live it? Again, that is how your career choices and your money choices intersect, but with you leading how that intersection happens. As you look at your wheel, you probably are going to have a gap. And I'm of the mindset that the gap is not a bad thing. The gap is where you can get a lot of insight about the choices that you're making, the quality of those choices. It can give you some feedback about the strategy that you have, presuming you have one. And if you don't, this gives you an opportunity to create one. And if you do, it gives you an opportunity to refine it. But the things that are going to help you with creating that strategy, with making sure that you're exercising the best discernment possible, are the next part of today's presentation, and that is the 8 habits that I referred to before. So your 8 no matter what habits. And I want to begin with, oh, sorry guys, I should have been pressing this forward. I want to begin with tracking your money. Now, I don't subscribe to tracking your money in the form of creating a budget, because I believe most people go about creating a budget in the wrong way, and therefore they're not successful with it. I advocate tracking your money so that you can get a sense of your patterns of behavior as it pertains to money. So it gives you an idea of the flow of money coming in as well as the flow of money going out and how that money is going out. It also allows you to be able to see what is going on with you emotionally, physically, psychologically, as you're using your money or as you're making financial choices. So if you are currently not in the habit of tracking your money, I highly recommend, number one, that you start doing it, even if you just do it for 30 days. But track your money in terms of not only how much you're spending, what you're spending, and what did you use for that transaction, but also what's going on in your life. And oftentimes, when people track their money and they see their patterns of behavior, it gives them a great deal of insight around what changes they need to make. Because if you don't know this already, let me tell you, and if you do know this, let me remind you, any goal that you have, 90% of the time, if not 95% of the time, has a financial component to it, has a financial goal to it. And the money to finance that goal, whether it's directly financial or indirectly you need money to complete it, is going to come from the money you already have, not the money that you are anticipating coming at some point in the future. So tracking your money will help you with that. The second no matter what habit is to have some policies. To have some policies, yes, around how you'll spend your money, but also when will you use your credit card? When will you go into debt? How much debt will you take on? What kind of debt will you take on? I'm not someone that says all debt is bad, because I don't believe that all debt is bad. I just think that we oftentimes are not as strategic with the debt that we take on, and we also don't have a really good exit plan, knowing when we take it on what we're going to do to get out of it and what's our game plan for that time frame. So you want to have some policy so that you're not making a critical decision in the moment. You already know what you're going to do when the opportunity presents itself. So if you're going into a store, you want to know, okay, I'm only going to spend X amount when in this store, or I'm only going to use my credit card on certain types of purchases, or I'm only going to go into debt for this reason, and when I do that, this is the time frame that I'm giving myself to pay this off. You do that and you can be much more strategic about how you use money to work for you, because your money needs direction from you in order for it to grow. And that ties into the next no matter what habit, which is having clear savings, investing, and life goals. And I'm fairly certain that everybody on this call, listening live or listening to the replay, that you all have goals. The question is, do you write them down, and do you go back and refine them and review them on a consistent basis? You know, so often people will come to me and they'll say, I want to save more. Well, that's not really a good goal because it's not very concrete and it doesn't give you anything to measure. So you need to be really clear about what that number is. Or they'll say to me, I want to invest. Okay, well, what do you want to invest in and why do you want to invest? Like, what is it that you want money to do for you? And in a very similar way, I think it backs into the same thing with your career. Like, what is it that you want this particular job to do for you? How does that fit into your overall big picture career plan? How does making this choice versus another choice, how does that measure? What are the pros and cons? Sometimes I don't believe that we are strategic as we can be or should be when it comes to these things. So tracking your money, having clear policies, and having really clear savings, investing, and life goals are critical for you being the CEO of your career and the CFO of your finances. Another thing is don't be afraid to outsource. But when you do that, you can't abdicate. You know, I say to people quite a bit, and I've already said it at the beginning of our time together, that being money smart isn't a gift, it's a skill. The other thing embedded in that, though, is this whole idea that nobody on this call is in a situation where they're not smart enough to do anything. It's not that you're not smart enough to manage your money on your own, or that you're not smart enough to make career decisions on your own, but you're not objective enough. And sometimes you need to have a third party who doesn't have the same sort of emotional attachment that you do to not only the choices, but also the consequences of those choices, to help you see more clearly what you are unable to see because you are too close. Having said that, though, it is your life and it is your money. So outsource so that you can get the expertise that you need to help you navigate the waters of life, whether it's your career or your money. But remember that it is your life and it is your money. And so you can't just abdicate that responsibility to someone else. The next thing is to make sure that when you're making decisions that you're doing that based on the full and complete picture. And I want to go back to the financial wheel for a moment. You know, at the end of the day, there are really only 4 things that we can do with our money, hence the reason for those 4 quadrants. You can earn it, save it, invest it, and spend it. And sure, there are nuances of things that you can do within each of those different categories. But each of those different categories are independent, and yet they are also interdependent, in the very same way that money and your career are independent yet interdependent. And sometimes in the day-to-day of making choices, we don't pause to see how those choices and the potential ramifications of those choices are going to impact the big picture. And this is where I really believe scenario planning comes into play and can be extremely beneficial. So when you're making decisions, give yourself permission to do scenario planning and to look at the full picture as you're making those decisions. This next one might surprise you, and it's the whole idea of acknowledging peer pressure and recognizing that none of us are immune to what is going on around us, whether it's what's happening with our colleagues, what's happening with our friends, our close friends, or our family members. Think about someone that you might sit an office away from or a workstation away from, and think about whether or not you are privy to any information, whether you should be privy to it or not, but you are privy to any information about their salary or about their bonus, and how does that impact you? And how does that impact how you feel about where you are? That's acknowledging peer pressure. Think about if you are trying to be really, really disciplined with saving and being much more mindful of how you're spending your money, and yet you have a lot of friends who are not on that same path, who are not being disciplined with saving. Acknowledge the peer pressure that might come up for you when you have to say no, or when you choose to say no to something that they are inviting you to do because that's taking you off course. We need to acknowledge that so that we can put it in its proper bucket and move forward. But far too often sometimes I think people get into trouble because they don't acknowledge that all of us are human. All of us on some level are comparing ourselves to others. And the idea is not to try to stop you from comparing, because I think that that's a human nature thing, but to make sure that when you do that, you catch yourself and you remind yourself of, does this help me in me working out and working on my plan? Because if you have a plan, it might be nice to know what other people are doing, but what they're doing really matters a lot less when you are aware of your own plan and you're working that plan. Another thing is to get organized. Some people are surprised that I have this as a no matter what habit. But the problem is when you're not organized, whether you're not organized in your physical environment, in your mental environment, in your paperwork environment, in your financial environment, the problem is that you miss out on opportunities that you might have seen a lot faster than when things are cluttered. You don't see them as well. And not only do you miss out on opportunities, but you're not really aware of the leaks. You're not aware of the financial leaks. And I see this a lot when clients come to me, and this is not an exaggeration. I had one coaching client who literally spent almost $600 a year just in ATM fees because she never went to her own bank, even though her own bank was closer to her home. To me, that's because of disorganization on a number of different levels, and that $600 that she could have chosen to use and spend in a completely different way. So getting organized, and that doesn't mean that everything has to be picture perfect and that your environment has to look like no one lives there. But you do need to have some systems in place so that when you need to make a decision, you have all of the people around you to help you make that decision. You have all of the paperwork around you to help make that decision. You have all of the tools and the resources. And you don't see what you need to see as well as you can if you're not organized. And then finally, discipline. The medical profession and the profession of law purposely says practice, the practice of medicine, the practice of law. And they do that because, number one, they have continuing ed involved, right? But also because it encourages people to never just stay in the mindset of, I've done this, I know this, I don't need to learn anything more. That's number one. And number two, it reminds them that you can be really disciplined in some areas and not so disciplined in others. So when it comes to your money, and making sure that each of those different quadrants are operating well individually as well as collectively, you've got to practice discipline. But that means that you need to know, what do you need to be doing? What choices do you need to be making? What's your strategy? How do those choices, and I keep harping on this because this is the thing that I think people overlook. Having a clear plan of action. You do it so well when you're at work. You do it so well when you're working on a work project. I find that so often, though, people let this go to the wayside when it comes to how they manage themselves. Specifically, how do they manage their money, but definitely how do they become, I should say, a little bit more proactive and strategic in managing their careers. So we've talked about the financial wheel exercise, which I'm hoping gave you some ahas. We've talked about 8 no matter what habits. I want to take us back to the beginning and the stats that I shared with you. What I'm hoping is that from what I've shared with you so far today, that you will go back and you won't just listen to today and, have your lunch and go on about your business, that you will have some time of reflection and you will think about the choices that you make on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, and see how when you string those choices together, you're telling a story. What's the story that you're telegraphing? What are you telegraphing to other people? What are you telegraphing to yourself? And how do you feel about that story? What do you like about it? What would you like to change? And then of the things that you want to change, what's your game plan for doing that? So the first thing is those stats that I shared with you in the beginning, 4.4 and a third, they are a part of the story that you are now woven into, whether you want to be or not, because that is what is happening on a macro level to our employment and our economic landscape. And I really want to bring your attention to 4.4. I am so in awe of that number for the following reason. Whenever you are evaluating a stock or you are evaluating a mutual fund, one of the things that you are told to do is to look at that performance over a 5-year period. Why 5 years? Because that is the understood benchmark for a business cycle. So a business cycle is 5 years, and the idea is that within that 5-year period, you will have seen some ups and downs. And so the idea is that a company, for 5 years, you will have seen how do they perform in good markets and bad markets. If it's a mutual fund, you will have seen how the mutual fund would have performed in good markets and bad markets. And isn't it ironic that the average worker today doesn't stay with their employer a full business cycle? To me, that is the biggest clarion call that invites you to, again, look at and manage yourself as though you are an entrepreneur, even if it is your intent to work as an employee, whether, again, it's in academia, nonprofit, or for-profit for your career. Because a lot of people are not even staying with their employer for a full business cycle, whether that's their own choosing or whether that's the choosing of the organization or the business for which they work. The other thing that this reminds you of is the fact that having that mindset and recognizing that you are the CEO and you are the CFO is how you actually have what everybody is hungry for. Everybody is hungry for security. Everybody is hungry for confidence. Everybody is hungry for being in control of their own universe. And this is how you do it. And so if you haven't already begun to embrace the idea of how important it is to have that mindset shift, I'm hoping that our conversation that we've had so far today is lightening you up and reminding you, or at least inspiring you, to make that happen. Now, I know in just a couple of moments, Jody is going to want to open this up for Q&A. So let me just share with you how we can stay in touch if you're interested in staying in touch, and how you can get even more if you're interested in getting more than what we're able to do today. And that would be through the Financial Intimacy Lounge. A membership there is where you would get access to experts, whether that's financial experts, legal experts, career experts, lifestyle experts. It's also where you will get tools in the form of online courses and resources in the form of worksheets and checklists, as well as monthly group coaching that's facilitated by me. And individually and collectively, all of those different touch points are designed to help you manage all aspects of your money and plus your career and your life better than you would on your effort alone. So if you'd like to learn more about that, you can go to JacquetteTimmons.com smart money skills, so JacquetteTimmons.com/smart money skills, and there's a dash between smart, money, and skills, a dash between each of those words. So you can check out if that's something that is of interest and of help and value to you. And if so, I look forward to seeing you inside the Financial Intimacy Lounge. So now I think, Jody, you're going to want to begin with Q&A.
Yes, I am ready to start with some Q&A, some great questions. So you spoke about, in the beginning of your presentation, trying to dispel the myth between an entrepreneur and employer, and being an employee, and which has more risk. And often there's quite a few questions about those who are interested in becoming an entrepreneur, but feel like they still need to be an employee till that happens. I guess they're trying to ask, there's one person, what's the fear factor in that, and is that emotional tied to their money? Or is it an emotional tie to their career?
Well, I would probably say that it is an emotion tied to their money because, we have embraced the mindset that if we work for someone else, we've got a paycheck coming either every 2 weeks or once a month. When I used to work at Bankers Trust, we got paid on a monthly basis, so I don't know if that is even still an option today. But so there's a sense of security that I put in quotation marks, air quotes, that comes with that. And oftentimes, when you work as an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily always have that safety net, depending upon your business model and depending upon how long it takes you to ramp up. So for the person who is fearful, who desires to work as an entrepreneur, but who is fearful about it from a financial standpoint, a couple of things. Number one is that means that you need to become that much more aggressive about your savings plan and your savings strategy. You need to probably end up saving at least a year's worth of your expenses, if not more, so that you have a cushion. And you need to also have a plan in place for if you don't begin generating revenue within 6 months, what are you then going to do? What's going to be your pivot point so that you don't have to have your lifestyle suffer? So without being able to have a follow-up question with the person, I don't know if they're able to start their business while they're working. I don't know if they're able to do that from an ethical standpoint and from some firms don't allow you to have outside interest. So it really is hard for me to answer that level of detail. But I'm hoping that even just suggesting to have a year's worth of savings, if not, even maybe 18 months worth of savings to cover your living expenses. I hope that's enough to get them started.
No, that's great. I mean, it was definitely a mixed group who had similar questions, and some have already kind of started, quote unquote, their side hustle, and others want to prepare. Seem like they have a little bit more hesitancy, and I think your idea of putting about 18 months or a year worth of savings away would be perfect. The next question is, do you believe that Maslow's law affects what we attain financially?
Okay, so when you say Maslow's law, are you talking about Maslow's hierarchy? What are you talking about?
Yes. The idea of attainability, and then once you reach certain levels, then you're kind of free. And survival of the fittest and all of that.
Well, yeah, absolutely, because I think if you are concerned about being able to meet your expenses, then you really don't have the clarity of mind, you don't have the creativity, but you don't have the emotional and the psychological space to be able to show up as well as you could if you didn't have the stresses of where am I going to eat next, where am I going to get my next paycheck, where am I going to get my next client, which is why the suggestion of making sure that you have that cushion behind you and that cushion for that length of period of time is what I think is required so that you can show up and be fully present and not so concerned about what's next that you can't deliver the way that you want to be known for delivering. And, let me, having just said that, let me just also say, I gave the keynote for, I graduated from Fordham's Graduate School of Business, and I gave the keynote for the 10th year anniversary for the Black and Hispanic MBA Association's dinner about a month ago. And one of the things that I mentioned in my comments was how everybody has to really look at themselves as a brand. And you've got to think about, again, whether you work as an employee or an entrepreneur, what do you want to be known for? What do you want to be known as the go-to person when it comes to either solving a particular problem or the go-to person for, being, I don't like to use the word thought leader, but that's the word that comes to mind right now, but being the thought leader on a particular matter. So who do you want people to know you as, and who do you want people to know you for? That is a really, really important part. Whether or not, again, you work as an employee or an entrepreneur, that's an important part of cultivating your brand and your image as who you are the go-to person for in terms of topic, and who are you the go-to person for in terms of audience.
Gotcha. So the next question comes from your no matter what habits, and it's just habit number 1. If you are starting to track or have been tracking your money, in a non-traditional way, not in a budget, as you said, what are some of the things that they should watch for? What are they really tracking? If a couple of folks want to try it for 30 days, some folks say they already have a budget and they're kind of working, the backwards way, as you're calling it, versus, so what should they be tracking? Are there like 5 top things? Are there 10 top things?
So one thing to look for is, what is the frequency of money going out? A lot of times people feel constrained and they feel like they don't have enough money, when in fact they do, but it's because of the timing of their bills that it feels like they don't have enough money. So when you are tracking and you realize that you have more bills going out the latter half of the month, which is what leaves you feeling like you don't have a lot, but you have fewer bills going out at the beginning of the month, what it then does is it puts you in a position to then call some of the, whether it's creditors or whether it's utility companies, and looking at renegotiating your payment date so that your outflow is a bit more consistent over the course of the month, as opposed to being lopsided with so much more going out at one part of the month than another. Does that make sense?
No, completely. So the other question is in regards to...
Oh, and I'm sorry, can I say one more thing? The other thing is, in addition to just looking at the rhythm, the other thing is you can really see to what extent you are making a financial contribution to your goals. Because when you track it, that's the only way you can see if you're really out. If you say, I want to, I don't know, I'm sitting in the office here, I want to buy a new printer. Just because I'm sitting in the office, that's the first thing I looked at. And it costs $500. And let's say you decide that you're going to save up the money to do that, as opposed to just going out and buying it. If you track your money and you realize that you've not set aside any money for that purchase, that's a clue that you need to start doing that. So another thing that you're going to look for is not only just rhythm, but also to really have a real objective way and tangible way of checking yourself to see if you truly are saving the money that you need to save to meet the goals that you have that have a financial component.
Gotcha. Yeah, because we had another question in terms of someone uses Mint.com to track their money, and so the question was, should she also be tracking her expenses herself in addition to using, an online tool?
two things. Does Mint track her cash purchases? So a lot of the times what I find is that those are wonderful tools for tracking your debit and credit card purchases, but they don't necessarily help you with tracking your cash. And that is really where some people can get lost in the woods, if you will. Because how many times have, any of us gone to the ATM machine on, say, a Sunday, taken out $100, and it's Tuesday, and now we have $30, and we're like, well, where did that $70 go? So if Mint, which I don't think it does, if Mint has a way of helping you to track how you're using the cash, not that you withdrew it from your account, but how you are actually using it, then Mint is sufficient. If not, then you're going to need to come up with something else. And if she's already using Mint, then maybe just having a paper-based system or an Excel system, or if she uses Evernote, Evernote could be a really great way of just kind of tracking what's going on with the cash.
Gotcha. And then everyone was intrigued by this whole term of living by default, but could you re-explain or maybe give an example of one of your clients or someone who or an example of how that really works?
Okay, so living by default is actually not the way we want to live. Living by default means, you are working at a job and you're earning, say, what they say, the average salary is, $75,000 or something like that. So you're earning $75,000 and you decide that, well, not you decide, but based on that, that's how you make your choices around how much you're going to spend, how are you going to invest it, and how much you're going to save. That's living by default. Living by design is you say to yourself, I want to save X amount, I want to invest what I save a certain way, and I want to spend my money a certain way. What do I need to earn to make that happen? So I can even, use myself as an example. I go through this exercise myself, so just so you know, I don't ask people to do anything that either I'm not doing or I'm not practicing myself, even if I'm not 100% there all the time. But I know that for a variety of reasons, I want to shift things up a bit, and I have a particular target in terms of what I want to earn based upon how I want my life to be right now in the near future. And so I've got a target for how much I want to earn working 20 to 25 hours a month. And so that helps to inform the kinds of projects that I take on. That helps to inform, how many clients I need to have and how much I need to hustle sometimes more than other times. So that's a different approach than if I just say, well, I earned this much this month, then that's, I'm going to have to make that work. I hope that helps to clarify it a bit more. And if
definitely. It's the idea that this is not the way to live, and it's unfortunately the way many people have been, and maybe making some wrong choices, and we all know we've been kind of pushed by parents and others to be in a specific major in college because it's going to make us more successful in our career later, and then that kind of cycle continues. The other question that is really important, too, is a lot of folks were really interested in some of the statistics that you have discussed, and if you could repeat some of them, because, I'm proud to say that I'm, in that 42 million freelancer population, and taking some of that risk. But, what some of those stats were, because I think some of them were trying to get them down and maybe use them to help guide themselves for their career stories.
Yeah,
absolutely. Do you still have those available?
Yeah, absolutely. So 4.4 is, again, from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and that is the latest data that they have available on the length of time that the average worker stays with their employer. And I just think that, I'm just flabbergasted because that's not a business cycle if we look at a business cycle as those in the investment community do as a 5-year time frame. People are not staying with their employer a full business cycle. Again, whether it's by design on their part or, the employer making that decision for them. So that's that statistic. The other
and I would say Jacquette, that would actually reflect what's going on in our economy now, that, there were that group of quote-unquote lifers, right? You get a job somewhere, you stay there as a coordinator, move your way up to a manager, become a director, a VP, and maybe to a C-suite if it's corporate or large enough to do so, right? And what you're saying is now people come in maybe as one thing and leave to become another thing someplace else or on their own.
Absolutely. And so what it really, I think before, like I think of my mother, right? She worked for Social Security, and she retired a couple of years ago after having worked there for 36 years. I don't think any of us on this call will have one employer, unless, again, you work for yourself, will have one employer for 36 years, or will have anybody within our immediate circle who will have worked for the same company for 36 years. I just don't see that as happening. And so I think that has definitely changed the dynamic between, it has changed the relationship dynamics between the employee and the employer. And I don't know if people have really caught up with that shift. I think the shift is there. I don't think people have caught up with it. And what I say as soft anecdotal evidence of that is a number of people that say to me, either directly or indirectly, that they want to get back to, pre-2008, pre the Great Recession. We're not getting back there. That's gone. And I think that that's an example of people not yet embracing the new reality, which is why I said at the very first slide, and for whatever reason, sorry guys, I can't make the slide go back where I would have gone back to it. But, I just think that that's one of the reasons why people are having a hard time with the new reality of the U economy.
Right, and I would say that the struggle is on both ends, where it's the workplaces themselves that, also need to do a mind shift and a mindset change of how the workforce and what people want from their jobs and are expecting as well, right? So less people are going into offices. There's a lot more mobile work, etc.
Absolutely.
So I think this is great. Any parting words or words of advice for our listeners today, or something that you might have told your younger self when you were choosing your career path, or even some things that you've told your clients?
Well, one thing I would say, is there is this myth that, do what you love and the money will come. I do believe it's important to do what you love. The money only comes if you have a strategy and a plan and you've got a business model to support it. And again, if you have committed yourself to working as an employee, you have to embrace the mindset of being an entrepreneur. I cannot stress that enough. And I think the numbers of 4.4 and 42 million, which is currently a third, and that's about to be a half in less than 6 years, I think all of that just dictates the importance of that. So have a plan, work the plan, and make sure that you don't create that plan today and not revisit it, because that's something that I see a lot of people doing. They'll create the plan, but they won't refresh it, and they won't go back to revisit and revamp it, because it's almost like they, put it in a paper, their binder, and they put the binder on the shelf and just think it's all going to unfold, but it's a living document. Your career strategy is really a living document. Your financial strategy is a living document, and as things change, whether they change within you or they change within your environment, you have to be able to adapt and be fluid. And I see that we're bumping up against the time. So those would be my last words.
Yeah, and I just want to capture some other questions and answer them in my closing comments, that there's definitely no right or wrong in career choices we make for ourselves, because there are choices. Whether or not you are a lifer and working 20-plus years somewhere and have been able to move around and navigate and get the things that you want out of the career, in addition to those of you who, move from place to place, which was definitely my story. And I've now proudly become, a freelancer multiple times, and I've worked in places. I think you need to just do what's right for you, but that Jacquette's great 8 no matter what habits to kind of follow and feel out where your challenges are and also what you're really good at in terms of monitoring your money and not making money your motivation for a job or a specific place, but finding what you're passionate about while you attach it to your career success in terms of monetary value. And I want to just promote our next upcoming Digital Career Success Series seminar, which will be on Wednesday, May 21st, and it will be featuring Marlon Cousins. He's the executive recruiter at the Markin Group. They do executive recruiting specifically in the diversity space, so that is colorful folks and women, trying to ensure that you are able to get the jobs and the careers that you want and help along with it. And the title is The Secrets of an Executive from an Executive Recruiter. How do you get yourself on the radar and what to do when you are found? And you will join Marlon Cousin and myself in next 2 weeks, but please tell your friends. Come with some questions, especially those of you who have sought out looking for search firms or have been sought out by a headhunter or would like to be. He's here to answer your questions and look at the challenges that you might be facing in your current career journey and your job search. Until next time, thank you so much, Jacquette, for joining us and sharing your knowledge base. And for the rest of you for joining us today, we will be sending out a recording and a survey for you to listen to it again, get the statistics you might have missed, and get some information that you wrote down or can share. So share with others. Have a great day.